and welcome. You're watching this very special broadcast with me surrounding Ashes. I am Karishma Singh, and now why are we talking about Ashes? It is billed as the greatest rivalry in Test cricket. The current Test series between World Test champions Australia and hosts England is living up to it. Two nerve-wracking games, two thrilling victories for Australia, but now it all seems in the past. Everything that Australia did to win the Lord's Test seems to have been overshadowed by just one moment in the game. Yes, the Jonny Bairstow dismissal, the world is talking about it. The dismissal may have swung the match in Australia's favour and triggered a tsunami of words, reactions, claims and counterclaims about laws and, very importantly, the spirit of the game. It has reached an extent where even Prime Ministers of Australia and England have gotten involved to back their teams. And tonight on this special broadcast, our focus is on the impact of the biggest cricketing controversy of the year. We're being joined by two very special guests this evening. Mirinda Farrell, who is an international sports commentator and presenter as well, and former cricketer Shishir Hatangri, who is also a former Mumbai captain as well. Firstly, thank you so much for joining us here on Mirror Now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mirinda, I want to start by asking you, what do you make of this entire controversy? Is England a crybaby, as has been mentioned in many Australian papers as well today?
Crybaby. Look, I tell you what, it's certainly, if nothing else, has added a little spice, shall we say, to the Ashes dish. Look, I think emotions are running very, very high. I can see a positive in that. At a time when so many people are worried that Test cricket is in trouble, Test cricket is dying, well, this has shown that a lot of people do care about it. A lot of people care about the Ashes, and it's all anyone is talking about in England. I can understand, because of the emotions, why people from both sides are perhaps a little bit upset. It's maybe gone a little bit too crazy. Just in that, it's a dismissal. It's not a great way to get out when you look at it. It's not those sorts of dismissals that you like to see generally, but it is within the laws. No one's disputing that Jonny Bairstow is out. He wandered out of his crease. He made a mistake. He perhaps should have had his wits about him a little bit more. So there's nothing against what Carey did. The only question around it really is if people think that Pat Cummins, the captain, should have withdrawn the appeal. Now, from the Australians' point of view, they don't see it that way. It's legitimate. It was out. But England have stated that they want to play the game this different way. They've been very strong on that. Brendan McCullum, the coach, has in the past apologised for affecting similar dismissals in his playing career, and he has certainly not been impressed by it. So that's where it is. I think the way people look at it, it's probably very much dependent on how they view these two teams and how they view that loss, whether they were supporting the winning or the losing side. That's how it works. We all get emotional.
Well, absolutely. You spoke very interestingly about the spirit of cricket, and I want to take that question across to Mr. Shishir Hatangri. So what do you make? Do you draw a line when it comes to spirit of cricket? Because the rules are in favour of Australia, but it's the spirit of cricket that is being debated about, where Ben Stokes said that, if I would have been the captain, I would have withdrawn the appeal. How do you look at this entire debate around the spirit of the game?
Well, firstly, Karishma, I think the spirit of the game comes into play when you flout the rules or the laws of the game. Obviously, this is within the laws of the game. So, the excitement and the controversy and the opinions and the debates that come out of it are only because the match was evenly poised at that stage, and also the fact that who did realize that walk in the park would almost strain diplomatic relations between countries. And it wasn't a village green cricket match. It was a test match that was played for the Ashes. There should have been more vigilance from the batsman in terms of what he could do and he couldn't do. Some call it a brain fade. Some call it a dozy attitude. But the point is that if you look at that footage very carefully, I don't think Alex Carey spent too much time after he received the ball from that bouncer, which Bairstow ducked to. He released it immediately, and obviously there was enough reason to believe that Bairstow had been doing it in the past, and this was an opportunity. When you look for opportunities to pick up wickets within the laws of the game, I don't think we should invite spirit of the game as a reason for why we play the game. So it's very clear in my mind that the laws of the game precede the spirit of the games. You flout the laws, then you can talk about spirit. But at the moment, I think the controversy and whatever we see in the long room of the Lords is only because the game was evenly poised and the batsman did make a mistake. Let's accept it and move on with it, rather than sit back and say, because again, as they say, Caesar's wife should be above suspicion. And whatever we've seen about spirit of the game, there are players who talk about it, but somewhere in their career they have flouted those the very spirit of the game. So we've seen footage of McCullum trying it, Bairstow trying it in the past. These are all heat of the moment incidents that we need to accept as a part of the game of cricket. And this is Test cricket we're talking about. This is not some village green cricket being played in the corner of a foreign field. So accept it and move on, because I think too much is being made out of the spirit angle, and it's not required at this point in time.
Well, absolutely. Melinda, coming back to you, do you feel there is a sense that the spirit of the game and spirit of cricket is used a little too conveniently by England? I will take you a little back in time and talk about 2008, Darren Gough versus Grant Elliott. It was England versus New Zealand. There was a mid-pitch collision, and Grant Elliott was out, and the umpire actually gave them a chance to sort of take the withdraw the appeal if they wanted to, but England was happy taking that wicket. So is there a sense of convenience when it comes to the spirit of the game?
You have absolutely nailed it on the head, Karishma. Absolutely nailed it. The spirit of cricket means different things to different people. I think it depends where you grow up in the world, what kind of cricket you might play, how you're taught, and that is the problem with it. It means different things to different people. And so that could be a bit of a cultural thing too. That's why we have laws, because they are set down and they are exact. There's no real way to say, yeah, but I don't like that law because it doesn't feel right. It is what it is. And it does get used by all countries at so many different times as basically a way to say, well, I don't like that. That's not spirit of cricket. You can't have a sport being based on something that's so ephemeral, that's so hard to define. And if you actually read the Spirit of Cricket preamble, it talks about playing hard and fair and accepting the umpire's decision. They're probably the two main things that are in there. So you always get into really woolly territory when you start talking about the spirit of cricket. It ignites debate. It's cricket's great cultural war. That's what it is. It's the culture wars. But it does get used, not just by England, it gets used by people everywhere.
Well, absolutely. And we will also be talking about the ugly scenes that were witnessed at the MCC long room. But before that, let's hear what Ben Stokes and Pat Cummins had to say about this particular Jonny Bairstow dismissal.
I think if I was a fielding captain at the time, I would have put a lot more pressure on the umpires to ask them what their decision was around the over, and then would have had to have a real think around the spirit of the game and would I want to potentially win a game with something like that happening, and it would be no.
It seems like the opposite number, Stokes, has suggested that he would have considered the spirit of cricket and withdrawn that appeal. So did you consider the spirit of cricket? Can you defend not withdrawing that appeal?
Okay. I thought it was fair. You know, it's, you see Jonny do it all the time. He did it day one to Davey Warner. He did it in 2019 to Steve. It's a really common thing for keepers to do if they see a batter keep leaving their crease. So, Kez, full credit to him, saw the opportunity. I think Jonny did it a few balls beforehand, rolled it at the stumps. Jonny left his crease. You leave the rest to the umpires.
Now, all of us saw what happened on the field between Jonny Bairstow and Alex Carey, but it was taken to another level at the MCC long room when elite members of the MCC resorted to abusing the Australian players. We could see Usman Khwaja getting into an argument with one of the members. The MCC, of course, suspended 3 members pending investigation. But Mr. Shishir Hatangri, I want to ask you, you've been part of a dressing room. How do you look at this behavior? This is unprecedented in a place like an MCC long room.
Yes, it is, and that's because it's so-called the Mecca of cricket, the home of cricket, and one would expect a very elite audience sitting in the room to react differently. But I think it was all precipitated by the crowd that didn't take very kindly to what had happened on the field of play, and obviously that filtered down to the long room. And it can be very. I think the players were expecting it. They would have been, while walking back in at lunchtime, they would have been expecting that this was some reception they were expecting in the long room. Not that I can justify that the home of cricket could indulge in such kind of activity, especially when the players are coming in at lunchtime. But I think it was all ignited by, if I may use that word, by the crowds themselves before or when the incident took place. Having said that, I've seen cricket in the 80s. I've seen the great G.R. Vishwanath call back Bob Taylor when he was the umpire. Was in Test cricket, so we might as accept that what are the laws of the game and adhered to. The game in the 70s and 80s was different. People played it because it was a British game that had strong foundations on spirit, on sportsmanship, etc., and the parameters for those were different. I'm not saying that was right or this is right, but the parameters have changed, and rather than sit and judge what the parameters are, I think we should accept the laws for what they are and make sure that we adhere to them when we are playing the sport.
Well, absolutely. One has to adhere to the laws. And this is for our viewers. We want to once play out the entire incident that happened between Jonny Bairstow and Alex Carey. Take a look.
That's another short ball. Oh, now this is going to be interesting. Jonny Bairstow's walked out of his crease here. This could well be out. I don't think there was a call of over. Jonny Bairstow's ducked and then walked out of his crease. Alex Carey's just thrown the ball at the stumps and hit them.
West side on, please. Okay, the decision for the box screen.
Melinda, we saw those unprecedented scenes at the MCC long room. Now it's come to a point where both prime ministers have also gotten involved defending their teams. How do you look at all of this? Has it blown a little out of proportion, do you reckon?
It's definitely blown out of proportions. I just want to say I actually think those scenes in the long room were a disgrace. They are very privileged, those members who get to have such close proximity to players. Most fans don't do that. We know that crowds can get passionate and sometimes abusive, which I definitely don't agree with. That just does happen. But to have the people in that room, in those players' faces, abusing them, I just think was a terrible look. And I know that the MCC is really embarrassed about it. 3 players have been suspended. They're investigating it. So that is one sign that yes, it's all been made too big a deal of. And also the fact, yes, now we have prime ministers involved. But they're just making comments really because they're being asked about it. You can look at it 2 ways. One, Joe Root today has at Headingley tried to calm things down a little bit by saying to England fans, yes, support England fans, but don't take it any further. If you think Lords, I'd never heard it like it was on that final day. It was unbelievable. Here at Headingley, Leeds, where I am now, it's a much more raucous crowd, particularly in the Western stand, the Western terraces there. So I just hope that it doesn't get too out of control and that we can have a little bit of calmness because we don't want it to get ugly. They're looking at security arrangements for this. But I guess, as I said at the start, it's a sign that the Ashes is very much on fire. And let's hope that the rest of it plays out with just brilliant cricket on the field, because we have had 2 enthralling test matches and I hope we have 3 more on the way.
And Melinda, if I can ask you, because you are at ground zero, this entire incident, you of course said that it has spiced the series, but who do you think is at more of an advantage? Is it going to pump up the Australian team, or it seems like England team will have a point to prove? Who do you think this entire incident is going to help?
Yeah, it could go either way. I think both will be galvanised by it. I think Australia will definitely be feeling a siege mentality, if you like. They're in a hostile country, and the media here has mostly been quite against them. The fans certainly have been. So they, I think, will really gather round Alex Carey, the wicket-keeper, and Pat Cummins backing him up as well. They're 2 matches up, so they know they only need 1 more win, and they won't care what anyone says, I imagine, if they're holding the Ashes in a week's time. For England, well, it could galvanise them. What we saw happen after that incident, it was like someone flicked a switch and Ben Stokes just went into beast mode, which we've seen him do on numerous occasions. And we had all these ghosts flooding back of Headingley in 2019 and how he almost single-handedly won them with the most incredible innings I've ever seen. And at Lords, it was just as incredible what he was doing. There's no other player, I don't think, in the world like Ben Stokes when the back's against the wall. So will that galvanise England? I think it will. Sometimes emotions in that way can take things too far and players get too emotional. So I imagine in both camps there's going to be a careful management, because they might want those emotions to pump them up. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that you're playing your best possible cricket and making the best decisions, not necessarily decisions made on emotion. So we've got a humdinger of a test coming up. It's going to be fascinating.
Well, absolutely, and everyone is going to be waiting to watch how the two teams perform. Mr. Shishir Hatangri, if I can come to you, whatever has transpired in the last few days as far as England and Australia are concerned, as per you, who is going to have the advantage going into the third test? Australia are already up 2-0, so they are going to look to seal the deal in Headingley itself.
Obviously, I mean, 2 wins in a test series, 5 test series for the Ashes gives Australia an advantage because, they've done a lot of work. But, keep this incident aside, they've done a lot of good work to go 2 up in the series. And thankfully, one thing for sure, we won't see any batsman going down for a walk on to tap the wicket unless he's got clearances from the umpire in the coming test matches. But what I want to see now is how England react to this situation. Is it by is it by performances? Is it by what they do in the test match, or is it just holding this as a crutch that was the changing moment of the Ashes? It'll be interesting to see because as we get into test number 3, 4, and 5, this incident will be far forgotten. And what you do on the ground as a cricket unit will take center stage, and that is for me very important as a viewer to watch how England come out of this, because it was just 1 wicket and and 2-0 up for Australia in this series. So how England come together, galvanize, and put this behind them will be so crucial for the way this Ashes series shapes up in test number 3, 4, and 5.
Well, absolutely. Everyone is going to be looking forward to how this series is going to pan out. I want to thank Melinda, and I want to thank Mr. Shishir Hatangri as well for joining us today and decoding this entire Ashes controversy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's another short ball. Oh, now this is going to be interesting. Jonny Bairstow's walked out of his crease here. This could well be out. I don't think there was a call of over. Jonny Bairstow's ducked and then walked out of his crease. Alex Carey's just thrown the ball at the stumps and hit them.
First side on, please. Okay, the decision for the book screen.
That's all we have time for in this edition of the special broadcast. Stay tuned to Mirror Now for more news and updates.